All right, welcome to this episode of Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about coaching. I get asked a lot by loan officers, and over the years, as you can imagine, running sales teams and whatnot, I get asked a lot if I will, mentor or coach somebody. And more often than not, someone's coming to me who's having a challenge in their business, and they're like, hey, I need some ideas. I need to be motivated. I need to be inspired. Like, what wisdom can you bestow upon me, after 25 years of doing this industry? It's funny because I always ask them the same thing. Every time I've coached somebody, and I've coached a number of people, I always start with their initial conversation with their borrower. And this is something that I don't think enough people give enough thought to. And part of it is because we live in a technology age now, and most applications are taken online by the borrower. I think it's also because we are recently out of a very busy mortgage cycle in 2020 and 2021, and even the first half of 2022, was still really busy. More purchases in 2022, but I think a lot of patterns were built over the last couple of years, and some people have gotten out of practice. And so I always ask someone, when you get a new lead, when you get a referral, regardless of where it comes from, what does that conversation sound like with the potential borrower? And it's always interesting, the answers that you get to that question, because some people will say, well, it really depends, and I'm like, well, depends on what? Depends on where you're at when you answer the phone, or depends on the questions that the person on the other end of the phone asks, or what does it really depend on? Because I would argue that that conversation should sound the same every single time. What I want to do here today is share with you at least my version of what that initial borrower consultation phone call should sound like. Now, keep in mind, I don't originate business anymore. I'm not doing loans on the day-to-day, but I do know how to build rapport and develop deeper relationships with my clients. And that's something that I was very good at doing for many years. And it comes, in many cases, at least starts with this initial conversation that I want to walk you through here today. And I've recorded videos about this in the past, so I don't want to do it the same way. This isn't going to be like a role play. And if there is a demand for that, maybe I'll have someone here in the studio and we can do a role play of this conversation. But I really just want to bestow upon you the idea, the concept that what we need to do right now more than ever is slow down. We need to slow down the conversation. We need to understand exactly what our client is looking for, even if it's just the very first conversation I've ever had with them. And many people have challenged me on this and said, well, Tony, I don't really know how I can help them until I've got an application. I need to see their credit report. I need to, get all their information in, and then I can advise them. And I would argue that you're missing a huge opportunity if you do that. If the first thing that you do when a borrower calls you is you send them to your website to fill out an application, I'm sorry, but you are going to have a very low pull-through on those borrowers, especially first-time home buyers. Look, people want to know that you have great advice, that you're easy to talk to, that you're going to be able to help them through the journey of purchasing, in many cases, their first home. In a market like this, we're working with a lot of first-time home buyers. So are you the person who can consult them and help them through the process? And if they've never had an in-depth, deep conversation with you, how could they possibly make that determination? And that's what you can do with this initial phone call. So I'm going to jump right into it. And I hope that if you're doing this already, then you know exactly what this conversation is going to sound like. And you're probably have made it a staple of your business. If you've never seen this before, then I hope that you take some notes or watch this a couple times, because I truly believe that loan officers that slow down and have this conversation with a borrower before they ever make application are going to have a much deeper rapport with their clients. They're going to have a better idea on exactly how they can help them through the loan process and help set the stage for what the process is going to look like. And then when they do eventually send them to their website to fill out the application, they know that there's going to be some follow-up and what to expect during that online application process. And always, of course, offer them to do it by hand. Not every borrower wants to go online and fill out their own application. There's still, good reason to offer the client to take their application verbally over the phone for them while you fill out the application. And look, if this is something that you're like, why would I do that? That would take so much time. I would ask you to look at your pipeline and see if you might not have more time available now where you could try a little bit different process to see if you get different results. So it goes something like this. The first thing that I do when I get a new lead from whether it be a real estate agent or a past client or even a friend of mine, I mean, more often than not, if I'm taking a pre-qual, it's because it's someone who knows me and thinks that I still originate loans. Now, look, I'm a licensed originator. I can have borrower consultation type of, in interviews with them. I just choose not to originate loans these days, but this is licensed activity that I'm allowed to do and enjoy doing from time to time. And so it usually starts off with me getting out just a notepad and taking down some notes. Now, for those of you that want to have a better idea of how you might set the page up, I'm just going to give you an example here. There's 4 things that I like to write down on my piece of paper before I even get started. And this is the same every time. If you were to look at every borrower consultation I've had, they all look exactly the same. And that's kind of what I'm advocating here, is that every conversation follow a similar pattern, that it's predictable. You've heard me talk about referable. If a client is referred to me and they've been through this process and they refer their friend to me, they're going to have the expectation that they're going to go through a similar process. So you need to make sure that your process is similar every time. So the 4 things that I write down are income, debt, cash, and credit. Those are the 4 areas that I'm going to ask questions in. Now, there's a few other things that I really want to get out of them as well. One of them is, what is the purchase price, or what is the price range of home that they're looking to purchase? And one of the last things I ask them is if they've already given much thought to what they want their payment to be. And the reason I do those spread out like that, I put the purchase price up front. Like, do you have a ballpark price range? I want to know what that number is before I even know what their income is or what their debts are, etc. And at the end, I want to know if they have a budget for what they want their monthly payment to be, because I need to be able to reconcile between the purchase price, the way they answered these 4 major categories of questions, and the payment that they want versus how much of a home they think they can purchase or how much I think they're going to qualify for based on their answers to these questions. So really, between income, debt, cash, credit, price range, and payment, those 6 things really are going to tell me exactly how to best help this borrower through their journey. So it looks something like this. First of all, I'm always going to get their name and phone number and jot it down on the top of my page. The very first question I'm going to ask is where they got my name from, who referred them to me, where did you find me? Maybe you found me on the internet. Maybe you were referred by a realtor, and I'm going to write down whatever that referral source is. This is very important information to capture in your database. Now, if they were referred by a past client or by a realtor or by someone, who I know personally, I'm going to do my best to edify that person. So for instance, they were referred to me by Jennifer at Windermere. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, how'd you meet Jennifer? She's one of the best agents in the county. You got really lucky working with her. How do you guys know each other? And then I'm going to have a sense, oh, well, she's my cousin. All right, well, I'm going to want to know that. Or, you know what? I really don't know her. I called on a listing that she had, and the first thing she said is, I needed to call you to get pre-approved. that's important for me to know. What is the relationship? Am I going to help Jennifer keep this client, this mutual client, because she doesn't have rapport yet? Or could I potentially lean on Jennifer because she's got more rapport than I do with this borrower? So asking who the referral came from and then edifying that person and getting a sense of how that relationship is established is an important first step. Now, from there, I'm going to be asking them if they're going to be purchasing this home by themselves or with somebody else. Now, right there, I'm going to find out, a lot of information if someone else is going to be on this loan with them, potentially if they're married or not, if they're going to be purchasing or getting help from a family member, a parent, perhaps, things like that will come up with that very simple question. Is this going to be just with you, or are you going to be purchasing with somebody else? And then usually around this point in the conversation, I'm going to take control. Now, this is intended to be a very conversational type of an interview, if you will, but it is important that you're in control of the questions that are being asked, because otherwise you tend to become an order taker, and now they're in control of the conversation. So normally I would say something like this, which is, all right, well, Tammy, it's really nice to meet you. And I have a series of questions that I would like to go through. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I've found that if I can get answers to a handful of questions, I can give you a lot better idea on what the next best steps are for you in the process. So would you mind if I just jumped in and started asking you some of those questions and just ask their permission to essentially gently take control of the conversation? I find this is a necessary step and one that a lot of loan officers don't do. So of course they're going to say, yeah, great, perfect, ask away. So now I'm going to start asking them in these 4 categories, right? Income, debt, cash, credit. So I'm just going to simply ask, what do you do for a living? How long have you worked there? How's your income structured? Do you get paid a salary? Do you get paid hourly wage? Is any part of your income derived from overtime or bonuses? Things like this. So this is a great opportunity to not only get a better sense of exactly how their income's structured, and I know some of you are going to say that's a lot of questions to ask when I could just get their pay stub and I'll see those things. It's like, yeah, but I need to know how they feel about their income, right? Like what I see on a pay stub and what they think they make could be 2 very different things. If you've been a loan officer for any amount of time, you know this to be true. So I like to get it in their own words. What do you do for a living? How long have you been there? How is your income structured? And don't be afraid to ask specific questions about their income. Because look, there's nothing worse than a borrower thinking they make $100,000 a year because that's what their W-2 says. And then you get their W-2 and you realize that half their income or a quarter of their income is derived from overtime, which is no longer being worked anymore. They had a bonus, which was not a normal bonus for that year and not likely to continue, or they've only been receiving it this is the first time they ever got a bonus, or things like this, right? So if I ask them up front, is any of your income derived from bonus? They can say, yeah, I got an amazing, bonus this year. Well, tell me about that. What was that for? How long have you been receiving that? Are you likely to receive that in the future? No, it's probably not going to be there next year. It was like a one-time thing. Okay, well, just know that we're probably not going to be able to use that in qualifying. I'm setting the expectation right up front so that they don't have this idea that in their mind, they make X. Once you get their pay stub, they make Y, and then you call them back and you're like, hey, sorry, you don't qualify. I've had that conversation with them in the first 5 minutes of meeting them. Not that I'm saying you don't qualify, but I'm letting you know that things are not as simple as putting down the income on your W-2. Look, if it was really that simple, you could just push a button and get a mortgage, right? We know that that's not true. And so part of this conversation is letting them know that this is challenging. There's challenges in every process of getting a home loan. And in their case, it may be around their income. Also, I would ask them if there's any other household income that they would want considered in their application. So ask questions about income. Next is debt. Now, obviously, getting their debt is very easy from pulling their credit report, right? But I want to hear them talk about their debt. I want them to walk through with me, what does debt mean to them? Because they may not know exactly what it is that's going to be on their credit report. So I'll ask them, do you have any car payments, credit cards, things of that nature? And just have them, list off for me the debts that they can recall. And I will remind them that, eventually we'll pull our credit report and that'll be kind of our record, but I want to have a general sense here today of how we're going to best structure your loan. And you'll learn things about this. You might learn that, we bought a RV during COVID because we really wanted to get out and travel with the family. And, I used to own an RV myself. So I might ask them, or, hey, what kind of RV did you get? Did you get a fifth wheel or did you get a motor home? And what kind of places have you guys been to? Oh my gosh, I've been to those places too. These are opportunities, believe it or not, when you're talking about their debt of all things, where you can find ways of building rapport with your client. Maybe it's something else that they have financed that they're going to share with you during this conversation, and you can find ways of asking them deeper questions about it. Oh, motorcycles. I love motorcycles. I don't have one myself, but I'm a big fan. What kind of motorcycle do you have, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, I have a Harley Davidson, or I'm into sport bikes, or whatever the case may be. If it's something that you also have knowledge about, it's an opportunity to build some rapport. You can even build rapport during their income. Maybe they work at Boeing. You're like, oh my gosh, my cousin works at Boeing. What department do you work in? I doubt you know each other. There's like a million people that work there, but it's been a great place for people in my family that have worked there. So, whatever it may be, the point is, and I think as you can see, there's ways of using these to build rapport. So go through their debts. And now what I like to do is also make sure in their debts, you ask them what they're currently paying for rent, right? You know as well as I do that rent is a really good indicator of how much they want their monthly payment to be. It's going to be an indicator of if we're going to be dealing with payment shock, etc. So ask them about their rent, ask them about their other liabilities, and I would just start tallying that up. I just do it by hand really quick. Okay, so their monthly payments are, $2,000, whatever. And I just make a little note of that here off to the side. And then I'm going to move into cash. So all that cash is there to do is remind me to talk about their assets. So I'm going to start with, thinking about a down payment. Have you given much thought to how much cash you wanted to put towards the purchase of a home? Well, actually, we were hoping to, put as little down as possible. Okay, perfect. We have lots of low down payment options. We'll look at those for you. But just so that I have a sense of things, how much money would you say you have today in your checking and savings account? Not that you would necessarily want to use for the purchase, but just to give me an idea of how much you have available. So this is a great opportunity to get a sense of where are their assets. Do they even have the ability to put a down payment? If they don't, it would be a great opportunity to talk to them about the ability to potentially get a gift from a family member, so on and so forth. So you can have these conversations now before you get a full application and realize that they have no money in the bank and NSFs on their bank statements. Like, this would be a good time to have that conversation. And I would also ask now about their 401k or if they have any retirement funds. Not that we would use towards this purchase, but it is going to help me get an overall idea of your financial picture. And I would take some notes on what they have as far as those assets, because in some cases, maybe they do want to tap into those depending on their situation. You should at least know what you have to work with. You'll also know that as you get the rest of this kind of figured out, maybe you need some compensating factors, and having reserves like that, as you know, could potentially help out. The next one is credit. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people is, just out of curiosity, do you happen to know what your credit looks like? And just leave it at that and see what they say. I like to write down the exact next words that come out of their mouth, because it will be very indicative of what their credit most likely looks like. And I find that when someone says, well, I think it's pretty good, that is an indicator that it's probably not that good, okay? Just as an FYI. And if they say, you know what, it's perfect, I've never had a late payment in my life, I've also found that to be true. Most people who know they have perfect credit know they have perfect credit. Now, this is also going to help give you an idea of where they're at in the process. They might say, well, I happen to know that I have a 685 credit score because I just had it pulled by another loan officer last week. might want to know that information, might want to know if this borrower is already working with another lender. So how they answer that question is going to tell you a lot about truly what their credit rating is, how they feel about their credit standing, and it will also give you an idea in many cases if they've already been shopping around. If they say that they know what their credit score is, say, just out of curiosity, where did you last see your credit score? Oh, my bank offers it, for free every month. I saw it there. Or, oh, I'm signed up with Credit Karma. That's where I saw it. Or, like I just said, maybe they've already met with a lender and had their credit pulled. These are all important things to know. Depending on their answer to that question, you're going to then share with them, well, just so you know, there's multiple different types of credit scores. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA, who one of those loan programs is what we'll probably be using to qualify you. They use a particular FICO version. So just so you know, if you pulled a credit report from somewhere else, don't be surprised if the number that I pull up is a little bit different, and there's an opportunity to then talk to them about your expertise around your understanding of credit. I would also ask them specifically, even if they say their credit's great, I would say, is there any instances in particular where you can remember having a late payment or any sort of a bill that went into collections or a bankruptcy? And just ask them if any of those specific negative credit situations exist. And I would then make note of that. For many borrowers, especially first-time home buyers, this is an area where they actually have a lot of anxiety already. Like they're worried perhaps about their credit, or they know they don't have a great credit history. So in taking your time and asking them these questions in a way that isn't accusatory, you get to kind of uncover, what might be there. And if they share with you, we have had some credit challenges, say, hey, that's no problem. That's what I'm here for. What we'll do is we'll pull your credit. We'll look at it together. We're not going to be surprised at some of the things that you might be there, but you might also be surprised at how it looks. And we'll go through that together. So this is an opportunity to put their mind at ease, to calm them down, to let them know that you're a credit expert and you will walk through that with them. So just to recap, you guys, we went over income, we went over debt, we went over their cash situation, and we went over their understanding of their credit rating. I believe these things are very important. Now, if you started off up front, which I mentioned but didn't really get into, is if you've asked them a price range of a home. If you didn't do that, now would be a good time to say, I'm just curious, did you already have a price range of a home in mind? And a lot of times they'll say, well, no, actually, I was kind of hoping you would help me with that. And say, you know what, definitely. By the time we're off the phone here in the next few minutes, I'll be able to give you a pretty good idea of what I think you're going to qualify for and what your range would be. But most people I've found have at least looked at some houses that they think would meet their family needs. So in a perfect world, is there a particular house that you'd be very interested in? And I find that most people, you guys, can give me a number of some sort. They say, yeah, well, there was this one. I don't know if we'll qualify for it. It was like $750,000, but man, that would be perfect. And I just like to jot that number down, just so I can remember, in a perfect world, what would they qualify for? And then one of my last questions is payment. Look, I'm going to tell you here in a few minutes how much you qualify for based on kind of textbook debt to income ratio calculations. But I find that everyone kind of has their own, range that they're comfortable with. So have you guys thought much about what you want your monthly payment to be to stay within your budget? I think that's a great question because it's different than what they qualify for, and it's getting their feeling on what they want their payment to be. Don't be surprised if it's the same amount that they're currently paying in rent, right? Like a lot of people would love to have their payment be the same. And maybe it can be, maybe it can't be, we don't know yet. But I like to get a number from them on where they want to be. And let's just say they're like, well, $2,500 a month would be great. Okay, so now I know that in a perfect world, they'd have a $2,500 a month payment and a $750,000 house. So I don't have to do much math to know that those two things probably aren't going to work together exactly. But it's a great talking point for the last step of this conversation, which is I would take the income that I kind of jotted down based on my conversation with them. I would take their debts. I would do some quick math on my calculator, and I would have a pretty good idea of how much they qualify for. And let's say that this person qualified for a $3,500 payment. So then I would just have a quick conversation, say, look, here's what I've found. You told me that you're comfortable paying $2,500 a month. Based on kind of textbook ratios, I think that you would qualify for closer to $3,500 a month. And so what we'll have to do is figure out how much does $2,500 a month qualify you for? How much does $3,500 a month qualify you for? Maybe do like a total cost analysis or some other sort of upfront calculation. I would typically just grab my HP and figure it out real quick and just give them a range of, what price range that would put them in. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, and I'm not going to bore you guys with the math, but you get the point, which is identifying that there is kind of this triangle going on. There's the price of home that they want to be at and the price of home that they're going to qualify for. There's a payment that they want to be at, and then there's a payment that they qualify for. And it's our job as early as possible to kind of reconcile those three things and make sure that all the expectations are in line. And then based on what they've told me here, based on their cash, if they want zero down or low down, I might tell them, hey, we're going to look at an FHA loan, or we're going to look at a USDA loan, depending on, where the home is that you're looking at. If they have, 50% to put down because they just sold a home, we'll be looking at a conventional loan or a jumbo loan. Like, this is my opportunity to just not fully qualify them, but just kind of give them an idea of the direction that I'm thinking at for their transaction. And then, and only after this conversation has been had, I would say, okay, Tammy, it's been really great talking to you. I hope that wasn't too painful, but man, I have a lot of notes here about your guys' situation and what you're looking to do. Here's what I would suggest, the next step. If you're comfortable filling out an application online, I'm going to send you an email or a text message right now with a link to fill out an online application. It's pretty simple. It's just going to go through your basic information, anything that you don't know off the top of your head. I wouldn't spend too much time figuring it out because we're also going to get some documentation from you, and I'll fill in any gaps that might be missing, or me or my assistant will give you a call once we have everything and fill in any missing gaps. So do the best you can off the top of your head in the next 10 or 15 minutes to fill out the application. There's also going to be a list of the documents that I need from you, because you said that you were self-employed, or because you said that you have a business, or whatever might have come up in that conversation. I might give them a heads up. Hey, one of the things we're going to need for your particular case is we're going to need, your bank statements for your personal and your business, or we're going to need your tax returns, because you mentioned you do this for a living, or whatever the case may be. Or, you mentioned that you derive a lot of your income from bonus or overtime. Would you possibly have the last paycheck that you received in December of 2022? Because that'll give me a breakdown of how your income's structured, right? Things like that. I have an opportunity now to just plant those additional seeds when I'm going to send them the list, so they're not caught off guard, because I know their situation. I know what I'm going to be asking for. So you guys, that kind of wraps it up. I know this was a high level overview, and it may sound very basic to those of you that have been loan officers for a long time. This was one of the first things that I learned and perfected as a mortgage professional. But I'm telling you that there's a lot of you who will probably watch this episode who maybe have even been a loan officer for a long time, and you're not doing this. You're not having this conversation with your borrower. And trust me, if every time a lead comes in, regardless of where it comes from, and the very first time you pick up the phone and have a conversation with a borrower, not only is it exactly the same, but it's something like this, where you're really finding opportunities to understand their situation, build rapport, dig deep into what they're doing, and at the same time, show that you care, you're empathetic, you know how to navigate the mortgage process, and that you're knowledgeable, right? This is your opportunity to also show your knowledge around product, program, setting them up for the next steps. So anyways, you guys, I hope this was helpful, and I hope that some of you, if you don't already use a process like this, that you adopt something similar. And what I want to do with market shares this year, as I talked about in my last video, is, we're going to have some sessions like this where we're going to talk more about tactical things that you could do in your business today that are going to help you. If you're not doing this and you start doing it, I promise you, your conversion will go up significantly. your ability to cross-sell and cross-reference your referral partner will go up significantly because you're intentionally, edifying that person with every lead that comes in. So you guys, thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope this was useful. If it was, give it a thumbs up or leave in the comments down below your thoughts on this conversation and what sort of content you might like to see in the future. And until next time, thank you so much and take care.